Hello, I'm Anna Webb. Welcome to this week's episode of A Dog's Life. I'm chatting to Sara Hormozi from UK Pet Foods and Chris Broadbent from Naturaw. And this episode is powered by Naturaw. Welcome, Sara Hormozi and Chris Broadbent to A Dog's Life.
Hi.
Hi.
Sara, you're here representing UK Pet Foods, and Chris Broadbent is here talking about raw food feeding from Naturaw. Now, what I'm so interested to discuss today is this pet population survey, Sara, that UK Pet Foods does every year, I think. But this year, it's really revealed some interesting statistics from a canine point of view.
Yes, that's right. So we've been running our annual survey for decades, and it gives us a really robust picture of pet ownership across the UK. What it shows this year is that dog ownership remains very strong, with 63% of households having a pet in general. That can be dog, cat, rabbits, any species that we consider as a pet. And that's about 18 million households. 41% of households own a dog, and that equals 15.5 million dogs. And that's a 3 million increase since 2021. So we are really, truly a nation of dog lovers here. And we're seeing a clear generational shift as well, with younger adults playing a bigger role. Among 25 to 34-year-olds, pet ownership has risen from 41 to 58% over a 5-year period.
Gosh, Chris, what do you think of that?
Wow. I mean, I've been in the dog food business only 7 or 8 years, and I'm sure the figure, Sara, you'll be able to correct me, was probably about 10 or 11 million back in the late, before we got into the 20s.
Yes.
But it's gone up hugely, hasn't it?
Yes, that's right. Definitely, there has been a dog boom, I guess, in the last few years.
Yeah, and it's 15.5 million dogs is an awful lot of dogs, isn't it? Just as a headline number. I suppose the issue is the humanization and the sort of companionship of pets in general, and just the rise in the number of dogs and cats is astounding. And I don't know what the childbirth figures are for the same period, but it seems as though pets are sort of becoming so much more of the family, so much more important.
Well, it's interesting, Chris, actually. I'm sorry, I'm sure you know this little statistics. I'm a bit mad about statistics, actually. It is from my psychology degree. It's a long story, but I had to take my statistics exam for the 3rd time. And if I had failed it on that occasion, I wouldn't have got a degree. Can you believe the pressure that was? But in London, apparently, there are more dogs living in London now at 130,000 compared to preschoolers. And the figure for them is 110,000. So it is true. There are more dogs in London than there are preschoolers. I wonder why. Is it people are delaying having children? Could be the answer. Sara, Chris, what do you think?
Well, I'm no expert, Anna, coming on the podcast to talk about childbirth statistics. To be honest, I hadn't prepared those in my notes.
No, me neither. Me neither. But I can talk about my own experience. I certainly had a dog first before deciding even to have a child. So, yeah, my dog, I've had him for 12 years now. My son's only 5. So, yeah, I don't know if other people of my generation would empathize with that or not.
Well, it's an interesting thought, but could this younger demographic, back in the day, everyone tended to get a dog when they retired. I brought a dog into my life when I was 37, having grown up with dogs all my life and really wanting a dog forever, but being totally unable to because I had to work in an office. And back then, there was no way you could have brought a dog unless, it was a guide dog or an assistance dog into the workplace. I mean, it was just never going to happen. Nowhere was dog friendly, so you couldn't combine socializing with your friends with your dog. It was a very different landscape. We're talking, this was 2002. But the younger demographic over time have not only prompted more dog friendly venues and accessibility for dogs, but could they be changing our view on food? Sarah, what do you think?
Well, I think it's true that younger pet owners are more used to having access to information and they're more digital savvy. They use apps, they use online communities, and they're more used to asking questions as well, questioning things in general. So there's a clear expectation from them around transparency, I think, and that puts extra responsibility on those who manufacture the food, create and market the food, to be very clear and transparent about the information that they provide on their ingredients, on the sourcing, on product types, because there is that clear desire from the younger generation. And that's precisely why we at UK Pet Food launched our Love Them Madly, Feed Them Wisely campaign, which is all about promoting responsible feeding and evidence-based approach to feeding pets. But how we communicate this information is just as important as what we communicate. That's why the language of this campaign is meant to be really accessible and relatable for pet owners. So essentially, the Love Them Madly, Feed Them Wisely campaign is all about loving our pets dearly while making wise, well-informed feeding choices.
Chris, I mean, yes, that's absolutely brilliant. I love that. 'Cause you should feed your pets wisely. Chris, for you and at Naturaw, why are British ingredients and, choosing from high welfare standard farmers kind of essential as part of this feeding them wisely?
Well, just to come back on what Sarah said there as well, it's really good, that UK Pet Food have done this work and had this campaign. I think also just talking about before we get into the food itself, just the quantity of food and the information that people need on how much to feed their dogs, because I know as an organization they've done a lot of work around pet obesity, and there is unfortunately the sort of humanization is that let's feed the pet probably more than it needs or should be eating. So there's a big education job to be done, I think, in terms of a healthy, appropriate food diet, but also with the volume of that food. So there's a quality and quantity side of it before we get into the sort of ingredients and things. But that's a really important message, and I think it's really good that has been landed sort of across the industry, whatever the food is, because young people especially do soak up that information and do have access, as Sarah said, to all these different sources of information, and there's so much information and misinformation out there, and like there are more dogs, there are also so many more businesses now making dog food or treats and or pet food in general. It's big business, and it's important that things are verified and measured and reported on, because there are so many claims out there as to what is good and not good, and it is an absolute minefield of information.
It is actually that. I mean, I'm glad I'm not a first time dog owner now, with my puppy, and then thinking, what am I going to feed him on? And if, I didn't know, if I hadn't really studied nutrition and so on, and being a bit of a nutrition freak for myself personally as a human, where honestly, the choice is, overwhelming, Sarah, wouldn't you agree?
Yes, absolutely. When we look at the range of pet food available today, gosh, yeah, there's more choice than ever, and that can be a good thing because there is more options for a variety of needs, budgets, etc. But it can also definitely feel overwhelming, not just for pet owners, but also sometimes for professionals as well who are recommending this food to pet owners. But our role at UK Pet Food is to help people cut through that by focusing on what really matters, and that's the diet is complete and balanced. And it's appropriate for the individual animal, for their life stage, for the lifestyle that they live as a family. And yeah, overall, I think it's a positive thing that there is choice for pet owners.
Oh yes, no, without a doubt. I mean, I keep hopping on about my age at the moment, but it gets to that point. But when I was young, there were only about three brands. So it has changed massively. But, in terms of the different types of food, I mean, could the message that we as humans are really getting now, about our 5 a day and eating fresh, trying to cut down the popping and the microwaves and all the rest of it, and eating whole fresh food, we're getting that because of health reasons in people. Is that helping to transfer for a growth in more fresh options?
I think it is, and I think obviously everyone wants to look after themselves and look after their pets, and often people look after their pets probably better than they do themselves.
Yeah.
We are conscious more of what we eat, and not all food or not all dog food is created equally. Um, I think, coming back to our business, and obviously we're a raw pet food brand, other types of food are available. But for us, it's about having the standards that, and again, we're part of a scheme which is run by UK Pet Food, which is to certify the way that we make the food, which not all manufacturers are part of that scheme. It's not just about making claims, it's having the highest standards and ethics and having them verified independently. So we're also a B Corp, which is a big thing, which means we're a purpose-led business. So we try to do the right thing in terms of using less, we only use meat from British farms, for instance, so we have less food miles. We only use ingredients that are from the meat side or from the human food chain. So there's so much that can be talked about in terms of sustainability and traceability and transparency, etc. But there are different foods, obviously, and everyone is different. But for us, it's about trying to use the highest possible quality ingredients to make sure that you are really looking after your loved four-legged friends, and also the actual welfare of the animals that go into making pet food is extremely important in terms of using organic or free range meat wherever possible. There's a real important message there in terms of it doesn't have to be, as I think some people may think, the sort of leftover scrapings that are not fit for humans. So yeah, we think about what goes into the food as a business, just as we do as humans, as to what we eat, and it's important.
It is important. I mean, you are what you eat, and so is your dog.
Hey, Anna.
Hey, Mike.
So we've just finished Billy's first 60 days of Antinol, and wow, what a difference.
Really? Oh my gosh, what have you noticed?
Well, he's shiner. He's much more energetic. Not that he wasn't beforehand, but you can see the difference. But remember, I told you he used to have that little limp in his back left paw that he'd hurt himself as a pup. He
Yes,
doesn't seem
yes.
to do that much anymore.
What, the hop, skip, and the jump?
Yeah, yeah. So it's like his joints are a bit better. And we actually had friends around this weekend who'd noticed that there was something good about Billy. And I was telling them about Antinol, and they said, "Oh, what's in it?" I said, "Well, green lip mussel." And they said, "What's that?" And I go, "Oh, well, I don't know. I'll have to ask Anna," as I always do. So
Well,
for next
green,
time, what should I say? What's so great
well,
about green lip mussel?
well, green-lip mussel, it comes from New Zealand. It's the only place that green-lip mussels live. And what's great about the green-lip mussel is that it is what's known as a broad spectrum source of omega-3. And the reason dogs need to take omega-3 is that their bodies don't make it themselves. So unless they're getting it through their diet, which can be omega-6 heavy. And it's very important to have a balance between omega-6 and omega-3. So it's normally through supplements that omega-3 is given. And green lip mussel is unique in its having everything from EPA, DHA, and ETA. So all the main omega-3s.
And how about Binks and Prudence? They must be much better as well.
Yeah, well, they've been on it for over a year, and they've been on green lip mussel forever since I've had them. So Prue's 10 now. So she's had green lip muscle since the first day I brought her home, to be honest, but not Antinol. And I only wish I'd discovered Antinol earlier. I really honestly mean that, because it's an oil rather than a powder. So its bioavailability, that means, its effectivity to get absorbed quickly and efficiently by the body is greater.
So people listening now and they want to discover Antinol for themselves, where do they go?
Well, all you have to do is go to Antinol, ANTINOL.co.uk, and then type in Anna Webb and get your special discount. So you know how sustainability is a big factor now in all sort of foods. We want plastic-free packaging naturally, of course, and that's something I know Naturaw does very well. But what about this whole thing that meat encourages climate change, because of cows' farts and other aspects?
Well, I think it's important to remember that pet food industry as a whole is already part of a circular economy, because pet food traditionally has been using byproducts of the human food industry. So in that sense, it's already helping reducing waste, adding value to those meat products that we are already producing for human food. But I also think that the newer, less conventional ingredients also play a role. So it's good that we now have insect proteins, or we have plant protein options and a variety of ingredients to use. It's basically like a toolbox of options that pet food manufacturers can be innovative and use the different options that they have in order to deliver the complete and balanced diet, but with the least environmental paw print, as we call it, as possible.
Yes, no, I know. I have a number of vegan friends, and a couple of them do actually feed meat, fresh meat. So that's really great. But others, obviously definitely don't. I mean, Chris, how do you feel about that? I mean, do people shows that are vegans come onto the stand and go, yeah, I just can't, because of my values, feed my dog on meat?
Yeah, I mean, I think there will always be that. I mean, my daughter's a vegan. Tom and Jess, who set the business up here, are vegetarian. A lot of people I'd say in the raw sector are very, conscious of obviously what they eat, and often a lot of people in our sector have come to it because of issues with their dog around diet, and have made decisions. As Sarah says, first of all, it needs to be, a complete food, and there are other proteins to meat. We can't shy away from that as a business. For us, we want to use meat. The name, the clues in the name. It's raw meat, and I think it's about having the right ingredients with the right provenance. But that's not necessarily for everyone. But I think people who understand diets, even if they may be vegetarian or vegan, wouldn't disagree that dogs were designed to eat this type of food. So I think some of the things that humans have given dogs over the years have not been what dogs were designed for or should be eating, and I think that's the issue. Are we, trying to do something? We're imposing our own standards on an animal that really was brought up, came about. I think one of your previous episodes was talking about wolves and the whole prey method, and that whole sort of thing. I'm not a qualified nutritionist, so I'd leave that to you two to talk about. But you want to be giving dogs what they were designed to eat, don't you?
Exactly that, exactly that. That's a whole podcast in itself, isn't it, Sarah?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Because with vegetarian and vegan, I think the other thing we need to bear in mind is that these are relatively new diets for dogs. And it's important to take into account the long-term effect of these diets, because we haven't fed vegetarian vegan diets to dogs for decades. So we haven't seen generations of dogs. How do they perform on these diets? So that's another thing to bear in mind.
Well, I think another thing is the sort of commerciality of it, coming back to insects and other things. I don't know, but I suspect a huge amount of money is needed in terms of R&D and development, and we're only at the very early stages of that in terms of developing other proteins. But if we come back to what's available now, a lot of commercially available pet food will obviously people have got businesses to run, and just the choices around putting things in it which are whole food and are sort of supposedly fresh and nutritious. There are still decisions to make around that. For instance, whether you're going to use carrot with your vegetables, which may be lower cost and higher starch and sugar, as opposed to using more expensive leafy green kale or broccoli, for just as something that would be in a sort of one of our ranges, or using lung or lots of tripe or etc. versus free range chicken carcass or whatever. So it's not just listing the ingredients and talking about it. It's having the right mix of things that actually is important.
Yeah, I mean, let medicine be your food and food be your medicine. I mean, but at the moment, it's really tough out there. I mean, whilst, these figures of 15.5 million dogs, is kind of massively eye-opening. At the same time, the RSPCA announced that in the same time frame, so we're looking at last year, when it was the figures were obviously obtained, abandonment's gone up by 25% in 2025 compared to 2024. So the cost of living crisis, I think, is a main factor of all of this. Possibly not thinking about the really long-term commitment of dogs. There's behavior problems that can influence abandonment, but that is the highest yearly growth of abandonment that has ever happened since records began. So we're not living in a totally rosy picture at the moment with these 15 million dogs. And the pet food industry see a change down to the cost of living crisis? Can you see people are buying cheaper brands? Has there been a noticeable difference, Sara?
Yeah, that's I think very valid point. I think everybody feels the cost of living pressure at the moment, and from our market data research, we did see some clear shifts in behavior. So, for example, owners are now shopping across more channels, trying like online retail, different online retailers, looking for better value products, sometimes switching between formats and products, and also bulk buying as a way of saving. But alongside that, there are also more positive trends as well. For example, we can see that particularly younger generations, for example, older millennials and Generation X, they continue to show a great interest in premium nutrition and high value products as well. So it's interesting to see both sides at play. And it's really, overall, I can say it's a mix of value seeking and prioritization of pet health.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd go along with that. I think the premiumization in the sector, despite the cost of living crisis, is that people are willing to spend more on their pets because they're becoming better educated and more aware of the needs and looking more as to what actually is in what they're feeding their pets. I think I talked to you the other week, Anna, about the statistic about when the vet hoo-ha was going on and the numbers, the paper was released on that. I found it staggering that I can't remember the exact number, is 6 point something billion being spent in the veterinary sector versus, I think, is it 4.2 billion, Sara, on pet food? But
yeah, pet food industry 4.2 billion.
Yeah, I mean, not just dogs, but pets and dogs of that within that is 2 and a bit billion. But the fact that we're spending so much more, on the actual health and maintenance and with the vet than we are on what's going into the pet itself, I found that quite astonishing.
I see it as being hugely ironic, Chris, actually, because there's a subject in itself. Vets recommend food, and that's really good. But vets only spend 6 hours in 6 years studying nutrition. That is actually totally true. And those sessions are mainly sponsored by one of two companies. I just wish more vets, and there is the Raw Feeding Vet Society, would be a little bit more open-minded really about nutrition, because I do believe what Hippocrates said. I wish I could have met him. I mean, what a great bloke. I mean, there is that thing: let medicine be thy food, and food be thy medicine. And that's how I work here. Totally. And and over the years, I've seen some. I don't want to blow I've really helped a lot of dogs through nutrition, and it makes me happy to help people, because sometimes it's not as difficult as you might think.
No,
Sara.
and not as as expensive either. I think to actually feed the right thing. We know with our own human food that often, the unhealthy choice is not necessarily the cheap. I think, you often hear people saying, well, it's expensive to do this or that. Whether it's making meat and two veg for yourself versus a ready meal, or actually looking at the ingredients in the pet food and buying some. There are plenty of quality foods available there. They're not all at the top end of the price range.
And I think, the market being understanding about what's going on at the moment out there. I will blow the trumpet for Naturaw here. You've just introduced the Real Simple range, which is brilliant. I mean, I've got to tell you, Mr. Binks, my 14-year-old English toy terrier, I wouldn't say he loves the Real Simple more than the forage range, for example, but I actually think he does. I don't know why, but he absolutely really, I mean, he tucks in, to all his food, really. Maybe I'm imagining it, but he was flooded with compliments at an event on Saturday. Flooded with compliments. I told someone he was 14, and they nearly honestly passed out, because they said, "Oh, and how old is Mr. Binks?" And I just said, "Oh, 14." And then there's a buzzer wrote down, and she went, "What? 14?" And I went, yes, he is. And really, and long may this continue, because but he is in good shape. So, Sara, there is that correlation, isn't there? Good ingredients fuels the biology and the physiology of any living creature.
Yeah, I think ultimately it's the nutrients, isn't it, that is nourishing the body and doing all the functions and contributing to health. I think ingredients are the vehicle or the vessel that deliver the nutrients to the body. And that's the beauty of pet nutrition. As you know, when a pet nutritionist formulates a diet, they make sure that they combine all the ingredients in the right quantities and right proportions in order to make sure the food is delivering the nutrients to the body in a form that is bioavailable to the animal and until the end of the shelf life of the product. So these are all the factors that a pet nutritionist would take into account when designing the product. That's why I think the nutrients that are delivered at the end of the process is the most important factor, even more important than the initial ingredients.
Absolutely. And I'd just add there, understanding the life stage of your individual dog. So, with senior dogs in mind, I'm quite good at that. So, Bruce 11, Binks is 14. So you're always feeding for their optimum health at that life stage as well. When the organs are getting older, you can't turn back the sands of time, but you can work on just understanding how the body is working, maybe aging, and understanding really, yes, that's it, the aging process really, and how to fight it.
Same for humans.
Yeah, exactly that.
As we get older. But I think, yeah, you're right. It's a long-term thing. And I think, Sara, you probably know you just unveiled a strategy, haven't you, for the UK pet food sector, and it's a long-term thing, and I think that the role of education in that is really important for on both the companies that are in that sector, for everyone to be trying to do the right thing, but also for pet owners to be thinking long term. A pet isn't just a quick purchase, is it, of something? It's you've got to not go into it lightly and really think about what you are feeding your pet.
Yes, absolutely. Education is everything, I think. And what UK Pet Food tries to do is education for pet food manufacturers to raise the standards of the industry, but also for pet professionals. Earlier, Anna, you were mentioning about the veterinary professionals that maybe during university they don't necessarily receive many hours of pet nutrition, but as a community, vets and vet nurses are actually excellent at seeking CPD training on pet nutrition. They're so interested on the topic. And because vets remain the most trusted profession for pet owners to go to when they have pet nutrition questions, and that's what our market data or market report has shown that. And that's why UK Pet Food tries really hard to provide that extracurricular education for veterinary professionals. We have this online course in collaboration with the Webinar Vet that's available on demand, and all vet teams, including vets, nurses, anybody that works in the veterinary environment that can go online and take this 20 hours of education on pet nutrition. It covers all aspects of pet food. Actually, it has 3 hours. 3 out of 20 hours is on raw pet food in particular, because we know it's such a fast growing and important feeding method for pet owners. And so I think it's important that we acknowledge that vets are seeking that information, because they are still in demand for giving that information to pet owners.
Well, they're the first line of defense, as it were. So, it is very important that they are on the page. I mean, from my own experience, and even, talking to another very esteemed vet who actually is one of my favorite vets of all time recently, their concern is still huge over the fact that raw is not sterile. So I'm heartened to hear about this. This is great. There needs to be movement in this direction, because I switch a lot of dogs on from processed on to raw, and often I'll hear, my vet is just like furious that we've switched to raw, and I go, look, just remember, your dog is your dog doesn't belong to your vet. There's still education to be done, I will say this, but I'm really happy, Sara, to hear that you've got this course, and that raw has a fair segment in those 20 hours. That's really brilliant, because it is a market that's growing. People are aware now that fresh whole into the bowl, can keep your dog. For example, I've just written a blog post. I'm going to try and do a reel about it, about how raw-fed dogs don't get bitten by fleas. It's actually true, because fleas are sugar junkies. So, flea dermatitis is a nightmare to fix. It's a long haul. Sometimes you can never fix it. But if you're eating a bowl of starch, it's so much sugar going on. Of course, dogs can't digest sugar because they don't produce, as you know, Sara, as much amylase as we do in our system. And I get eaten alive by mosquitoes, but then I live on pasta and bread. That is my... and potatoes. Baked potatoes are my favorite food. So it's no wonder. So there's a lot to talk about. But look, this is a great conversation. And thank you, Sara, for pointing out about that course. And if there's any way I can help promote that, I would love to.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. And I wanted to actually mention that the UK Pet Food website, ukpetfood.org, is a one-stop shop for pet food and pet nutrition education, especially for your audiences, if they are pet professionals and they deal with pet owners on a daily basis, giving advice. Please do check our website, because we have a lot of colorful posters and fact sheets, and link to our educational courses like the one with the Webinar Vet that everybody's welcome to join. I mentioned it's designed for veterinary professionals, but other pet professionals can also sign up and take the course, because it's really useful in terms of giving you that overall understanding of the whole pet food market and options that exist, different feeding types. And it's not sponsored by any particular brand of pet food, so it's completely impartial. And for that reason, I think it's quite unique and useful.
Yeah, I'd go along with. I don't know how many people do know what the awareness figures are, but UK Pet Food is a really good source of information, for professionals and for anyone who's interested in what they're feeding their pets. Obviously, it represents the whole. We are just a very small business in a huge sector, but the standards and the verification and things are very important to be part of that. And just one part of feeding obviously is raw, which we are. I totally accept there are other ways of feeding your dog, but they do run a really good scheme as well, which ourselves and I think 5 or 6 other, considering how many companies there are out there making raw food, whether you agree with it or not, at least you can make sure that you're adhering to the very best standards and are accountable and have those sort of running through your business. So the certification side of it and being affiliated to obviously making sure that you're making FEDIAF complete compliant food which fits European standards is important, because there is coming back to the start, there's so much misinformation out there.
There is indeed. And I think hopefully this podcast will guide people. And I think we've definitely discussed a lot of food for thought. So thank you both, Sara and Chris, for joining us today. And all the links will, of course, be in the show notes.
Thanks, Anna.
Thank you.
That's our show, everyone. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, go on, rate and review the show wherever you tune into your podcasts. Thanks again, of course, to Sara Hormozi and Chris Broadbent for joining us today. And all the links are in the show notes. A big shout out also to my producer, Mike Hansen, for all the music and production as ever. And if you're interested in finding out more about Antinol and indeed about Naturaw, then go to my website and hit the recommends button. That's annawebb.co.uk. And if you haven't already, go on, subscribe, because that way you'll never miss another show. Bye for now.